Taran stood on the observation deck of the starship, staring at the glowing planet below. It was massive, with swirling blue oceans and shining golden cities. This was no ordinary mission. The Emperor himself had sent for him. Taran, a human scientist known for his creativity and intelligence, had been asked to re-educate the Emperor's daughters. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew humans were often underestimated in the galaxy. The starship slowly descended through the atmosphere. Taran could see large towers, smooth roads, and gardens that stretched for kilometers. The princesses had lived here all their lives, isolated from other worlds. The Emperor wanted them to learn more about the galaxy, about strategy, science, and problem-solving, but in a way that only humans could teach. Taran had always believed humans could bring a new perspective, and now he would prove it. When he landed, the palace doors opened automatically. Tall and shining, the walls seemed to touch the sky. Guards in polished armor bowed to him, though he noticed they kept a respectful distance. The palace was silent at first, then three young women appeared, walking carefully. Taran studied them closely. "This is Myra," said a guard. "She is the oldest. She is smart and cautious." "This is Lena," the guard continued, "she is kind and thoughtful." "And this is Sara," the guard finished, "she is brave and energetic." Taran nodded. "It's an honor," he said. He could feel the curiosity in their eyes. Myra looked at him carefully, as if she were measuring his worth. Lena gave a small, polite smile. Sara bounced slightly on her toes, clearly eager to move around and explore. "Welcome," Taran said, bowing slightly. "I am here to teach you things that might surprise you." The princesses exchanged glances. They had never been outside their palace gardens in the same way he had described. Their lives had been controlled, planned, and safe but predictable. Taran's words sparked a tiny flame of excitement in their hearts. Over the next few hours, Taran showed them around the academy. It was not just a building, but a place for learning and discovery. Rooms were filled with strange devices, holograms, and models of planets and spaceships. Taran explained each device carefully, showing how humans combined science, creativity, and imagination to solve problems. The princesses listened quietly, their curiosity growing. "Why do humans think differently?" Myra asked. Her voice was soft but firm. "Because we have to," Taran replied. "We face challenges in many ways. We explore, we create, and we ask questions that others may not think of. Sometimes, that helps us find solutions faster than expected." Sara's eyes lit up. "Can we try some of these things ourselves?" she asked. "Of course," Taran said. "Learning is not just listening. You will do, you will explore, and you will make mistakes. That is how knowledge grows." The princesses spent the afternoon practicing small exercises. Taran taught them basic problem-solving games, simple engineering puzzles, and ways to work together as a team. At first, they struggled. Myra wanted to plan everything perfectly before starting. Lena worried about making mistakes. Sara jumped into tasks without thinking, which sometimes caused minor errors. Taran smiled. "Mistakes are part of learning," he told them. "Even humans make mistakes. The important thing is to think, adjust, and try again." By evening, the princesses were laughing. Myra had learned to take small risks. Lena began to trust her own decisions. Sara realized that thinking carefully first sometimes helped her succeed faster. Taran watched proudly. They were beginning to understand the human way, combining curiosity, creativity, and caution into one method. That night, the princesses gathered in their chambers. They spoke quietly about the strange new ideas they had learned. Myra said, "Taran makes everything seem possible." Lena nodded. "It's different from how we are taught, but it feels right." Sara bounced slightly. "I can't wait to see more tomorrow." Taran, in his own room, looked out at the palace gardens below. He knew the work ahead would be challenging. The princesses were bright, but they had never faced the galaxy's problems. He also knew that humans had a unique role. Sometimes small guidance, sometimes big ideas, could change entire civilizations. As he drifted to sleep, Taran thought of the days ahead. Lessons, experiments, and challenges awaited. But most importantly, he felt hope. Humans could teach more than science or strategy, they could inspire. And sometimes, inspiration could be more powerful than anything else in the universe. The adventure had only just begun. The next morning, Taran gathered the princesses at the Academy's launch platform. The three girls' eyes widened as they saw a small shuttle waiting, sleek and gleaming. Today, they would leave the palace grounds for the first time. Taran smiled. Today, you will see the galaxy beyond your gardens. You will learn in ways no classroom can teach. Myra adjusted her robe carefully, standing straight. Where are we going? She asked. First, to the floating forests on the neighboring continent, Taran explained. It's a place filled with creatures and plants you've never seen. You'll need observation, teamwork, and creativity to explore safely. Sara bounced on her toes. Creatures. Plants. I can't wait. Lena simply nodded, curiosity shining in her eyes. We will learn, then, she said quietly. The shuttle rose smoothly into the sky. As they traveled, Taran explained the mission. They would encounter strange life forms, navigate unfamiliar terrain, and work together to collect data. Remember, he said, humans learn by asking questions. Don't assume anything is impossible. When they arrived, the floating forests looked like a dream. Giant trees with glowing leaves floated above crystal lakes. Strange, gentle creatures moved between the trees. Some had wings, others had long, delicate legs that skimmed the water. Myra stepped forward carefully, examining the plants. Lena crouched to observe a small creature hopping across a floating branch. Sara ran ahead, laughing as a bright, floating flower brushed her arm. Stay together, Taran called. Observe first, then interact. Watch, learn, and then act. The princesses began their exercises. Myra sketched diagrams of the plants, noting patterns in their growth. Lena took careful notes of the creature's behavior, understanding how they moved and fed. Sara tried small experiments, testing the floating flowers' reactions to gentle taps. Taran guided them, asking questions that pushed their thinking further. Why do you think the plants float? He asked Myra. Myra paused. Perhaps their roots release gas or they have a way to stay lighter than air. Exactly, Taran said. Observe carefully, then think creatively. Humans often combine observation and imagination to solve puzzles. As the day passed, the princesses encountered challenges. A narrow floating bridge swayed in the wind. Myra hesitated, overthinking each step. Sara dashed ahead too quickly, nearly slipping. Lena helped balance Myra while warning Sara to slow down. Taran watched, impressed. The princesses were learning not just human knowledge, but human teamwork. By evening, the princesses sat on a floating platform, watching the sun set behind the glowing forests. Their notebooks were filled with sketches, notes, and ideas. Myra said quietly, I never thought learning could feel like this. It is exciting and scary at the same time. Lena nodded. And it is better when we help each other. Sara smiled brightly. I like that mistakes can be part of learning. It feels good to try and fail, then try again. Taran smiled. That is exactly what humans do. We explore, make mistakes, and keep improving. Curiosity is more important than being perfect. The next day, Taran introduced the princesses to negotiation exercises. They simulated interactions with alien cultures, using role play to solve conflicts and trade resources. Myra approached each scenario with careful logic, Lena listened to understand, and Sarah suggested bold, creative solutions. Taran guided them to combine their approaches, showing that teamwork and different perspectives often led to the best outcomes. During one exercise, a simulated crisis occurred. A small settlement of aliens was running out of water. The princesses had to propose a solution. Myra suggested building reservoirs, Lena suggested careful rationing and teaching the aliens conservation methods, and Sarah proposed creating a new irrigation system using nearby rivers. Together, they created a plan that was both practical and creative. Taran nodded. This is what humans do naturally. We observe, think, create, and work together. By the end of their time in the floating forests, the princesses had changed. Myra's carefulness now included courage. Lena's empathy now included decisiveness. Sarah's boldness now included thoughtfulness. They had seen firsthand that learning was not just about knowledge, but about combining mind, heart, and creativity. As the shuttle carried them back to the palace, the girls looked out at the glowing planet below. Myra whispered, "The galaxy is bigger than I imagined." Lena nodded. "And it is full of surprises." Sarah laughed softly. "And we can be part of it now." Taran watched them quietly. Human methods had sparked curiosity and confidence in the princesses. They were no longer just imperial daughters, they were students, explorers, and thinkers. He knew the lessons were only beginning, but the first seeds of change had been planted. That night, as they returned to their rooms, the princesses spoke quietly about their experiences. They were eager, inspired, and full of questions. Taran smiled to himself. The journey of re-education had begun, and it was going to be extraordinary. A week after their journey to the floating forests, Taran received a message from the Emperor. A colony on the distant planet of Zillar faced an unusual problem. The water supply from their main river had slowed to a trickle. If the issue was not solved quickly, the crops would fail, and the settlers could suffer. Taran saw this as the perfect opportunity for the princesses to put their new skills to the test. "This will not be a simulation," he said to Myra, Lena, and Sarah. "This is real. You must observe, plan, and act using everything you have learned." The shuttle carried them across the galaxy. Myra leaned forward, studying the planet below, her analytical mind already forming questions. Lena scanned the data from the colony sensors, quietly thinking through the needs of the people. Sarah tapped her fingers on the control panel, eager to arrive and start solving the problem. When they landed, the colony was in a quiet panic. Settlers were worried, unsure why the river had slowed. Taran introduced the princesses to the colony leaders. "You are here to help," he said. "Use your knowledge, your teamwork, and your creativity." Myra immediately began analyzing the river's source. She measured the flow, examined the banks, and studied satellite images. Lena spoke with the settlers, asking questions about daily routines, irrigation habits, and recent changes to the environment. Sarah explored the surrounding area, checking for natural obstacles or unusual changes in the land. The princesses worked together, each using her strengths while listening to the others. Myra noticed a layer of mineral buildup at the river's upper source. Lena discovered that a recent storm had shifted small dams upstream, diverting water away. Sarah proposed building a simple canal to redirect some of the water back to the colony while they addressed the natural changes. "Let's combine these ideas," Myra suggested. "We can remove the mineral blockage, adjust the small dams, and guide the water through a temporary canal." Lena agreed. "And we should teach the settlers to monitor the flow and maintain the channels themselves." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "I can help design the canal so it is easy to build quickly." With Taran's guidance, the princesses coordinated the efforts. Settlers worked under the princesses' direction, clearing debris, adjusting small dams, and constructing the temporary canal. Myra's careful measurements ensured the water flowed efficiently. Lena's empathy kept the settlers motivated and focused. Sarah's daring ideas made the solution faster and more creative than anyone expected. By the end of the day, water began to flow steadily back to the colony. The settlers cheered, amazed at the princess's ingenuity. The emperor's daughters, once naive about the wider galaxy, had solved a real, urgent problem using a combination of observation, teamwork, and creative thinking. Taran watched them with pride. Humans often adapted quickly to challenges, finding solutions others might overlook. The princesses had absorbed this mindset. They were no longer just students, they were innovators, able to inspire others to think differently. That night, the princesses sat around a small fire with the settlers, listening to stories of daily life and sharing their own experiences. Myra spoke about the importance of careful planning. Lena discussed how empathy and understanding could guide decisions. Sarah laughed and told stories about taking bold steps and learning from mistakes. "You have changed how we see challenges," one of the settlers said. "We will remember these lessons forever." Taran smiled quietly. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Humans could teach more than facts, they could show ways of thinking and working that others might never discover on their own. Even the emperor's daughters, raised in isolation and privilege, could now make a difference across the galaxy. The next morning, the princesses stood on a small hill overlooking the restored river. Myra's eyes sparkled with understanding. "I see now that learning is not just about knowledge. It's about applying it to real problems." Lena nodded. "And about helping others while doing so." Sarah grinned. "And about taking action without fear of mistakes." Taran placed a hand on Myra's shoulder. "You've all done well. This was your first real test, and you passed. But there is still much more to learn. The galaxy is full of challenges, and humans can help even the most advanced civilizations see new ways to solve them." The princesses felt a quiet pride. They had faced something real and difficult and succeeded. They were beginning to understand that human ingenuity was not just about machines or technology, but about thinking differently, combining minds, hearts, and creativity. As the shuttle carried them back to the imperial palace, the princesses were silent, each reflecting on the lessons of Ziller. Myra thought about careful planning and courage. Lena thought about empathy and guidance. Sarah thought about boldness and creativity. Together, they realized that humans could inspire not just learning, but change, and that was a lesson worth spreading. Taran looked out at the stars, knowing that this was only the beginning. The princesses were ready for the next challenge, and the galaxy had much to learn from humanity. Back at the imperial palace, the princesses carried the lessons of Ziller with them. Their success had given them confidence, and they were eager to apply what they had learned to their own world. Taran watched them carefully, knowing that the real challenge would not be completing missions, but inspiring change in a palace bound by tradition. Myra, Lena, and Sarah met in a quiet garden, surrounded by glowing flowers and fountains. Myra spoke first. "We have learned much from Taran, but our people still think only in old ways. We must show them another path." Lena nodded. "If we can teach the palace advisors and the citizens new ideas, they may see that progress is possible without fear." Sarah grinned. "And I want to try new things myself. Not just teach, but act." Taran guided them in planning small projects that could demonstrate human-inspired solutions. They began with the palace gardens. Using techniques they had learned on Ziller, they created a self-watering system that reduced waste. Myra designed the layout carefully, Lena taught the gardeners how to monitor the plants' needs, and Sarah tested playful experiments to make growth faster and more efficient. When the emperor visited the gardens, he was surprised. "These plants flourish in ways I have not seen," he said. The princesses explained the new techniques simply and clearly. Myra spoke about careful observation, Lena about understanding needs, and Sarah about creativity and trial and error. The emperor listened, intrigued. Next, the princesses introduced small educational programs. They invited palace students to observe real experiments, encouraging them to ask questions, make predictions, and test ideas. The children were thrilled, and even some of the palace scholars began to pay attention. Taran noticed the change. "This is human teaching at work," he said. "It is not about orders. It is about curiosity, participation, and discovery." The princess's influence began to spread beyond the palace. Citizens came to see the gardens, students talked about experiments, and new ideas began to circulate. Myra carefully monitored the results, analyzing what worked and what needed adjustment. Lena helped people understand why change was helpful, gently guiding them to see benefits. Sarah encouraged bold experiments, reminding everyone that mistakes were not failures but steps toward success. One day, a group of young engineers approached the princesses. "We want to try your ideas in our city," one said. Myra smiled. "You may observe, experiment, and work together. That is the human way." In a neighboring district, citizens began adopting the princess's methods. Gardens grew more efficiently, water was conserved, and students learned to think creatively. The palace advisors, who had been skeptical, began to see that progress could be achieved without breaking traditions, only by combining old knowledge with new approaches. The emperor noticed the changes. He called the princesses to the grand hall. "Your efforts are remarkable," he said. "The palace feels different. People are learning, creating, and thinking for themselves. This is unexpected." Myra bowed slightly. "We are learning from a human, father. Humans think in ways that help solve problems differently." Lena added, "We hope these methods can help the empire grow stronger, without fear of change." Sarah smiled brightly. "And they can be fun too." The emperor looked thoughtful. "I have always valued knowledge and strength, but perhaps, creativity and collaboration are equally important." That night, the princesses gathered again in the garden. "Do you see, sisters?" Myra asked. "We are planting seeds that can grow across the empire." Lena nodded. "Small actions can lead to big changes. If people see results, they will adopt them naturally." Sorrow laughed softly. "And we get to experiment and have fun along the way." Taran watched them quietly, feeling a quiet pride. Humans had a way of spreading ideas not by force, but by example, by curiosity, and by inspiring others. The princesses had begun to understand this. They were no longer just learners, they were leaders, guiding others to think differently, work together, and embrace innovation. In the following weeks, small projects appeared across the palace and city. Public spaces became more efficient, learning programs encouraged curiosity, and people began working together more than before. The empire was changing, quietly but surely, as the princess's new perspective spread. Taran reflected on the journey so far. Human guidance had opened the eyes of even the most advanced civilization. The princesses had learned more than science or strategy, they had learned how to think creatively, lead with empathy, and inspire change. The seeds planted in Zillar and the palace garden were growing, promising a future full of possibility. As the sun set behind the palace towers, Myra, Lena, and Sorrow looked at the gardens glowing in the evening light. They smiled, knowing that the path ahead would be full of challenges, but with curiosity, creativity, and teamwork, they were ready. Taran looked at the stars, feeling hope. Humans could inspire entire civilizations, and this was only the beginning. The seeds of change had been planted, and soon, the galaxy would see the power of human-inspired ideas. The princesses had grown more confident since their lessons and successes in the floating forests and the palace. Now, the emperor had given them a new task, to visit their home planets and demonstrate the knowledge they had gained. Taran would guide them remotely, giving advice and support from the academy. As the shuttle lifted off, Myra looked out the window at the sprawling city below. It feels strange to leave the palace again, she said softly. Lena placed a hand on her shoulder. But we are ready. We have learned much, and now it is time to share it. Sarah bounced in her seat. I can't wait to meet our people and show them what we can do. Their first stop was Viralia, a planet known for its vast deserts and small settlements. When they landed, the people came forward with curiosity and caution. The princesses introduced themselves and explained their mission, to help improve daily life and teach new ideas in a simple and useful way. Myra led a session on water management. She taught villagers how to collect rainwater efficiently and use small storage systems to conserve supplies. Lena worked with families to organize community gardens and care for the plants properly. Sarah designed fun experiments for children to learn about growth, plants, and water cycles. The villagers watched and listened carefully, amazed at how quickly their small efforts began to bring results. Your methods are clever, one elder said. We never thought water could be managed this way. Myra smiled. It is a combination of careful observation, planning, and trying new ideas. Anyone can do it. Sarah added, and it can be fun too. The children laughed, helping to set up the systems. Next, the princesses visited Ziller's sister planet, where small towns struggled with transportation and communication. Using maps and simple tools, Myra analyzed traffic flow and suggested better routes. Lena worked with villagers to coordinate schedules and teach teamwork in moving goods efficiently. Sarah demonstrated new ways to use carts and small machines to make transport easier. By the end of the day, villagers were moving more efficiently and enjoying the new methods. Taran monitored their progress from the academy, guiding them remotely. You are doing well, he said via communication link. Remember, it is not just about technology. It is about showing people how to think differently and work together. The princesses soon discovered that not all challenges were easy. On one planet, a small settlement had a stubborn river that often flooded during rains. Myra carefully measured the river's path, Lena spoke with the villagers about safety, and Sarah suggested small barriers and channels to control the water flow. Together, they implemented a solution that balanced safety and efficiency. The villagers were grateful and impressed. Along the way, the princesses noticed subtle but meaningful changes in themselves. Myra had learned to trust her instincts as well as her careful planning. Lena had grown bolder in speaking her mind while still remaining kind and understanding. Sarah's daring ideas were now tempered with patience and thoughtfulness. Together, they had become a team capable of solving problems creatively and with confidence. By the time the princesses returned to the academy for the night, they were exhausted but satisfied. Myra said quietly, "We are making a difference, step by step." Lena nodded. "And we are learning as much as we are teaching." Sarah smiled broadly. "The galaxy feels bigger, and we feel stronger." Taran watched the shuttle land. He knew this journey was more than a test, it was a real opportunity for the princesses to apply human ways of thinking and inspire entire civilizations. The lessons of curiosity, teamwork, and creativity were spreading, quietly changing minds and hearts. That night, the princesses gathered in their quarters, sharing stories of the day. Myra showed detailed sketches and notes. Lena told stories of families learning new ways to work together. Sarah laughed about children trying experiments that sometimes went hilariously wrong. They realized that change was not about perfection, but about effort, learning, and collaboration. The emperor called to them the next morning. "Your work on these planets is remarkable," he said. "It seems the humans have taught you something truly valuable. I see the growth, not just in results, but in how you think and lead. This is inspiring." Myra bowed. "We are grateful for Taran's guidance, Father. Humans see challenges differently, and we are learning to do the same." Lena added, "We hope these lessons can spread further, so others can learn too." Sarah giggled, "And maybe have fun while learning." Taran watched from the academy, quietly proud. The princesses had started to carry the human spirit across the galaxy not through power, but through ideas, curiosity, and the courage to try new things. They were no longer just daughters of an emperor, they were leaders, thinkers, and teachers. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the shuttle window, Myra, Lena, and Sarah felt a new sense of purpose. They understood now that learning could be shared, that creativity could inspire, and that even small steps could lead to big changes. Humanity had shown them a path, and they were ready to walk it, wherever it might lead. Several months had passed since the princesses had returned from their planetary journeys. The lessons from Taran had taken root, not only in their minds but also in their hearts. The princesses now carried a quiet confidence that inspired everyone around them. But one morning, a surprise awaited them, one that none of them could have predicted. Myra was the first to notice. "Look," she exclaimed, pointing to a group of small figures playing in the palace courtyard. 3 little children were laughing and running in the sunlight. Their faces held a mix of curiosity and cleverness, and their eyes seemed unusually bright. Lena's hands flew to her mouth. Could it be? Sarah ran forward excitedly. They must be ours. But how? The palace staff gathered, equally amazed. The emperor himself came forward, raising an eyebrow. "I see that your return has brought more than just ideas," he said with a small smile. "You have brought a new generation. This is unexpected, yet remarkable." Taran, who had been observing remotely, spoke through the palace communication system. "The princess's children are a new kind of student," he explained. "They are being raised with both imperial tradition and human-inspired learning. Their potential is extraordinary." The children were playful, yet their curiosity was evident. They examined the palace gardens with careful attention, noticing patterns and asking questions. Myra knelt beside her child, demonstrating how to measure the growth of a plant. Lena guided her child in observing the behaviors of a small animal, teaching patience and empathy. Sarah encouraged her child to test ideas freely, reminding them that mistakes were steps toward learning. The children learned quickly. Myra watched with amazement as her child solved a small engineering problem, arranging blocks to create a balanced bridge over a stream. Lena smiled as her child found gentle ways to interact with a shy animal, gaining its trust. Sarah laughed as her child experimented boldly, testing new ideas with joy and creativity. The emperor, observing from the palace balcony, was impressed. "These children seem different," he said. "They combine what I have taught with something new. Something I have never seen in our empire before." Taran nodded. "Exactly, Your Majesty. They have inherited the potential of their mothers and the unique ways of thinking that humans bring. They are creative, observant, and eager to learn. They may one day inspire the galaxy in ways we cannot yet imagine." Over the next weeks, the princesses focused on guiding their children. They introduced simple exercises inspired by Taran, observing the stars, experimenting with water flow, and building small machines using everyday materials. The children absorbed knowledge eagerly, asking questions that even adults paused to consider. One afternoon, the 3 children worked together on a small project in the palace garden. They wanted to create a way to collect rainwater for the plants efficiently. Myra's child suggested measuring the space carefully. Lena's child suggested how to share water fairly among different plants. Sarah's child suggested building small channels to guide the water where it was needed. Together, they created a solution that impressed everyone watching. The emperor, witnessing this collaboration, nodded thoughtfully. "It seems that humanity's influence has shaped not only my daughters but also their children. This is truly remarkable. Perhaps humans have lessons for the entire empire, beyond even what we imagined." Taran smiled quietly. "This is the result of combining curiosity, creativity, and teamwork. The children are learning not just knowledge, but ways of thinking. They represent the future, the next step in the empire's evolution. The princesses felt pride and joy. Their children were not just heirs to the throne, they were students, explorers, and innovators in their own right. Myra whispered, "I never imagined our lessons would reach this far." Lena nodded. "They carry our hearts and Taran's guidance. They will grow into leaders who can think differently and inspire change." Sara laughed softly. "And they are already full of ideas. Just wait until they try the floating forests." Taran looked at the stars, reflecting on the journey. Humans had not only influenced the princesses but had planted seeds that would grow into a new generation of thinkers. The children were proof that human methods, curiosity, creativity, observation, and teamwork could spread across generations and cultures. As the sun set over the imperial palace, the princesses and their children played in the gardens, laughing, learning, and experimenting. The future seemed bright. Ideas flowed like water, and every small success promised larger possibilities. The empire was changing, not through force, but through inspiration. Humans had shown that guidance, curiosity, and empathy could shape civilizations, and now, the next generation was ready to continue the journey. Taran knew this was only the beginning. The princess's children, raised with both human wisdom and imperial heritage, were destined to make the galaxy a place of creativity, understanding, and hope. Months had passed since the princess's children had joined the palace. Their presence brought new energy, curiosity, and laughter. The princesses Myra, Lena, and Sara had grown into confident leaders, guiding their children while continuing to implement human-inspired ideas across the empire. Taran observed proudly from the academy, knowing that the lessons he had shared had transformed not only the daughters but the future of the empire. The emperor called a grand assembly in the palace courtyard. Advisors, citizens, and scholars gathered to witness the progress made under the princess's guidance. Myra stepped forward, speaking first. "We have learned that knowledge is not enough. Observation, creativity, and teamwork are just as important." Lena continued, "We have learned from humans that ideas grow best when shared, tried, and improved together." Sara added, smiling, "And mistakes are not failures, they are steps toward discovery." The emperor listened carefully. He had once believed that power and tradition alone were enough to guide the empire. Now he understood that progress required curiosity, collaboration, and courage. "You have changed not only your own lives but the empire itself," he said. "Your efforts inspire all of us." The princess's children played nearby, observing the proceedings with keen interest. Myra's child pointed out patterns in the assembly layout. Lena's child suggested a small improvement to organize seating more efficiently. Sara's child drew a quick sketch of a way to guide foot traffic safely. Even at a young age, they combined intelligence, creativity, and teamwork, proof that human-inspired methods were already taking root in the next generation. Over the following weeks, the princesses expanded their initiatives. Schools adopted human-style experiments and problem-solving exercises. Local governments used creative strategies to improve infrastructure. Communities learned to work together and solve challenges without relying solely on old rules. The empire was quietly changing, guided not by force, but by ideas, curiosity, and example. Taran visited the palace virtually, speaking to the princesses and their children. "Look at what you have achieved," he said. "Humans often teach without controlling. We inspire by showing possibilities, asking questions, and encouraging exploration. You are now carrying that legacy forward." Myra looked at her child, who was carefully building a small water wheel. "It is amazing how quickly they learn," she said. "They combine our guidance with creativity we could never have imagined." Lena nodded, watching her child helping another child organize an experiment. "They are already thinking like humans do, curious, collaborative, and independent." Sara laughed softly as her child tested a small flying model. "And they are fearless. Just like we learned to be." The emperor observed all of this with quiet pride. "Humans have brought more than knowledge," he said to his daughters. They have brought a way of thinking, a way of inspiring others. And now, your children carry that forward. This is a legacy that will last for generations. The princesses smiled. They had begun their journey as students, uncertain of what humans could teach. Now, they were teachers, innovators, and leaders. The lessons had spread across the empire, from the palace gardens to the outermost colonies. And the children promised to continue this growth. Taran looked at the stars, feeling hope for the galaxy. Humanity's strength was not in power or technology alone, it was in curiosity, creativity, and the ability to inspire others. Across the empire, humans had planted seeds that would continue to grow, shaping civilizations in ways that no single ruler could achieve. In the palace garden, the princesses and their children worked together. They measured plants, tested simple machines, and shared ideas freely. The laughter of children mixed with discussion and observation, a symbol of the new era. Myra, Lena, and Sarah knew that the galaxy was larger, more complex, and full of possibilities than they had ever imagined. But with curiosity, teamwork, and creativity, anything could be achieved. That evening, the emperor walked quietly through the gardens. He watched the princesses guiding their children, teaching and learning at the same time. I understand now, he whispered. Humans do not simply conquer or lead, they inspire. And inspiration lasts far longer than orders or rules. The princesses gathered, looking at the stars above. The galaxy is full of challenges, Myra said softly, but we are ready. Lena nodded. We can think, create, and guide. We can inspire, just as humans inspired us. Sarah laughed softly. And we can have fun while doing it. Taran smiled from the academy. Humans had done more than teach, they had changed the future. The princesses and their children were proof that curiosity, creativity, and empathy could shape entire civilizations. The empire would grow stronger, wiser, and kinder not through force, but through inspiration. As the sun set over the palace towers, the princesses and their children continued their work, laughing, learning, and experimenting. The seeds planted by humans had grown, promising a bright future. Across the stars, the legacy of humanity would continue to shine, guiding civilizations with knowledge, creativity, and heart.